Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Live in the Get Unstuck series with myself, Sarah Archer. I am a career and leadership coach, and I work predominantly with ambitious female leaders who want to have more success in their careers, but without selling out or burning out. And I started the Get Unstuck series to help you move forward in your career if you're stuck on a particular aspect of it. So the lives are always short, around 15 minutes, and practical. You always have something to take away and put into place or practice. And hopefully they're inspirational and motivational as well, and give you a kind of 15 minutes just to think about something career development related or job search related, whatever it might be. So I'm going live here in LinkedIn and also here in my Facebook group, the Love What You Do Lounge. So if you are with me and you're watching me live, please do say hello, pop a hello in the comments. And obviously, if you've got questions about today's topic, or you've got a comment that you want to share, please do feel free to do that. And similarly, if you're watching on replay, just tag me in the question and I will come back and answer that later for you. I know a lot of people end up watching on replay. So today's topic is all about executive presence, developing executive presence and how it can increase your leadership impact. And I chose this topic because I saw a post, and I can't remember the stat on it, but it was about how someone had done a poll and female leaders really wanted to develop executive presence. It's one of their kind of top development areas for their career. And I thought it would be good to do a live on it because it's one of those things where we talk about it a lot, but it's not always clear exactly what we mean by it. And even when I was doing the kind of prep for the live today, you know, I came across so many different kind of definitions of it that it gets a little bit overwhelming and a bit confusing. So I thought I would try and distill it a little bit for you. And for me, when I was thinking about it, I kind of feel that it's being kind of powerfully your best self. So it's being authentic and it's bringing your best self to the fore and really kind of amplifying it. So that's my little definition of it, but I'm going to share a few more with you today. But obviously, we need to think about why it's important to have executive presence, because if you're going to put time and energy into developing it, you need to know there's a reason for it. And obviously, there are a few different reasons, but it has shown, research has shown that it's really important in your career advancement, particularly for leadership roles. So there was a study carried out by the Centre for Talent Innovation in America, which revealed that executive presence makes up 26% of what senior leaders say it takes to get the next promotion or the next role as a leader. So 26% is quite a significant amount, isn't it? It's like a quarter of what we do to get that next role is down to our kind of executive presence. So that is a good motivator for really thinking about, do I have it? Do I have some of it? Do I need to enhance it? But also, it's not just important, obviously, for promotion or getting that next role. It's also important in terms of you as a leader, because it's definitely kind of present in things like negotiation, influencing, presenting, pitching, engaging and motivating your teams, both internally and externally. And it's also about inspiring confidence in the decision makers in your organization so that they choose you or they trust you to deliver that big project or take on that particular area of work or step up and do something. So it's definitely something we want to be consciously developing, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later on. So let's just think about what it is. And I would encourage you to develop your own definition of it. But I'm going to talk through a few that I quite liked that could be helpful. So obviously you've got mine, which is being powerfully your best self. But I also quite liked, the definition of calm confidence, and also the synthesis of outward behavior and internal values. So that kind of real matching your own values, which speaks to the authenticity, with how you're then behaving. And then the kind of elements of it, because obviously it will vary from person to person, but there are kind of elements that maybe kind of show up within it. And I've listed a few of them here. I'm sure there are more, but I just thought I didn't want to kind of overwhelm you. So it's kind of that passion and that positive energy for your cause, your message, what you're trying to do within the organization. It's that sort of not being worried that you don't have all the answers. So not feeling like you have to show up knowing everything. You've got that confidence to know that you can navigate that, and other people will have the answers to some of those thorny leadership questions. That you're kind of curious and you're always learning, obviously commanding that kind of respect and that trust, actively listening, empowering other people, that sort of poise under pressure, knowing that you can cope with whatever comes to you. Often that sort of relaxed, open body language. So lots of eye contact, smiling, leaning in, showing that you're actively listening, showing that you're kind of open, whilst, conveying that sort of decision-making ability. You're going to be confidently making a decision, and also being that kind of effective communicator. So engaging, telling stories that are effective, using language that conveys that confidence. And obviously professional appearance is part of that executive presence as well. So you can see there's kind of lots of elements within it, and it might feel a bit overwhelming, but it is about defining your own definition of executive presence. And one of the ways that you can do that, which I quite like, is to think about somebody that you know. So it might be somebody in your organization, someone you've worked with in the past, or somebody that you know and admire. And just kind of write down that person's name. So you can do that right now if you're watching. Write down that person's name and then think about what are the kind of behaviors, the skills, the traits that they are demonstrating that say to me they have executive presence. So what is it about what they do or how they are, their way of being, that signifies executive presence to you? Because by doing that, what you might then be unpacking is either the things that you already have that are resonating, so the skills, the traits, the behaviors you already have that you can see are mirrored in that person, or they're giving you information about what you might aspire to be demonstrating. So it's a useful exercise because it will also help you see what's important in terms of executive presence to you, and will help you shape your own definition. And obviously then you want to do a kind of check-in of, do I have it? And you can do a sort of self-assessment to a degree of, how am I showing up? So going into particular meetings, or if I'm presenting, or if I'm in a kind of negotiation influencing scenario, how am I showing up in terms of what I think is executive presence? But more powerfully, you can ask for feedback, obviously choosing the individuals you want to give feedback quite carefully. So I had a client I was working with, and we were looking at executive presence, and she had a presentation to the board coming up. So, and one of her colleagues was going to be at that presentation. So she used that as an opportunity to brief her colleague about what she wanted them to look for. So she was being quite targeted about it, and then got the colleague to give her constructive feedback about how she came across in that situation where she was presenting to the senior board, which was very, very useful because it helped her recognize what she was doing already and areas that she could improve on. And that's what that sort of self-assessment needs to take into account. What are the positives? What am I doing already? And what are the gaps that I could actually start working on? And the other thing you can start to do when you're doing this kind of thinking about executive presence is recognizing what you want your personal leadership brand to be. And I often do a lot of work with clients around personal leadership brand because it's important to create your individual, authentic leadership brand. Because once you're clear on that, it will be much easier for you then to communicate that through your executive presence. So just doing that reflective piece, stepping away and thinking about your own presence. And I know it's challenging when you've got a full-on big job. But just having a little bit of time to think about what am I doing well, what actually are the areas that I need to develop, can then help you work out what you need to focus on. Because the good news about executive presence is that it can be learned. It is a skill. You know, there are people who do it very naturally, and they tend to be very kind of charismatic, magnetic people. And sometimes that can make us think, well, you've either got it or you haven't. But actually, it can definitely be learned. It is a skill. So just because you might be feeling your executive presence isn't where you want it to be right now, that is not always going to be the case. You can definitely learn it. So what I'm just going to run through now is some things you can do to start developing it. But obviously, if you are watching and you're comfortable, you could pop into the chat what you feel your definition of executive presence is. I would love to know that. Or you could name somebody that you really admire that has executive presence, that you know, or you're aware of. But yeah, do that reflective piece. So have that kind of baseline, so you know what you want to focus on. And what I would say, which I say to my clients a lot, is don't try and do everything at the same time. So choose one aspect of executive presence you want to develop and focus on that until you feel like you've nailed that, and then move on to the next thing rather than trying to change everything up. Because obviously with executive presence, it's good for it to be for you to be really conscious. So even just attending this talk today or watching this talk today is going to raise the aspect of executive presence more into your consciousness, because you want to be thinking consciously about developing a particular aspect of executive presence. So being present can be one, first step. Okay, I've got this meeting coming up. Let me be thinking really in a present way. How do I want that meeting to go? What do I want to do to signify that I have executive presence? What am I going to experiment with today? Because it is about experimentation. It's not about just getting it right straight away. It's about experimenting and looking at what worked, what didn't work, what will I change up? Because the executive presence work requires that kind of conscious effort and review. So I tried this out. Did it work? How did I feel about it? Will I do it again? Do I want to change it next time I do it? So just being really present and really intentional about it. So that could be in terms of maybe experimenting with body language. So maybe I'm going to just really notice my body language. I'm going to work at smiling more, using my eye contact more, leaning in, actively listening. So it might be around body language, standing tall. Am I being open in my communication? So that might be one aspect you want to experiment with. Or it might be around specific communication. Do I want to use particular language? Do I want to practice my kind of storytelling more? So just identifying an area that you want to be really present with and noticing an opportunity to experiment. Obviously, to get feedback if you can, that might not be possible. But obviously, if you're doing it in a virtual setting that might be being recorded, that's also another opportunity to assess how you're coming across, how the language is landing. Are you using lots of ums and ahs? That kind of thing can be useful little assessment. Also, you can think about spending more time with people who are, exuding executive presence, or that you admire, who have that calm confidence. Because obviously, if you're spending more time with people who are at the level you want to be at in terms of having executive presence, that's going to enable you and help you to raise your game. If you play sport at all, if you play with people who are better than you, it definitely lifts your game. And the same thing is true around kind of leadership and executive presence. You can also think about, not being tempted to keep a low profile. So, trying to dial up your energy in all situations. And I know it's hard, some days we're feeling really on it and we're really kind of, definitely kind of probably exuding more of that positive energy and that passion and that executive presence. And there are other days when we're going to feel our energy is lower. But it's tempting then maybe in those scenarios is to just keep a low profile, not contribute, not be present so much, to drift, let our thoughts drift, and really kind of to work on in every situation to bring something extra to it, and not fall into that trap of thinking, oh, it doesn't really matter, I'm not going to engage that much, but always bring something to it. But to counterbalance that and to notice, well, what do I need also then to top up my energy if I'm going to be using more energy by being consciously present, consciously intentional about executive presence. So also filling your cup so you don't get depleted. And you can also think about considering your professional image, because obviously it's the first thing people notice about us is how we look. Sadly, that is the kind of thing people notice first. So you want to be able to kind of use your professional image to your advantage. So what I would say here, this is about noticing for yourself, how do you want to be perceived? How do you want to inspire confidence through not just your body language, but your appearance as well? And I'm certainly not going to be prescriptive about this at all. This is a personal choice. And I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that you can't dress in a casual fashion and have executive presence, because you certainly can. But it's about understanding, what do you need to help you signify that you have more executive presence? So, it could be a simple thing of just maybe wearing a bright lipstick, if obviously you like wearing makeup, or it might be a signature piece of jewelry that makes you feel good, or something that you wear, or a color that you wear that builds your confidence. So it's just also thinking about your appearance and how you want it to help you with signifying that you have executive presence. So that's something else you can do. You can also think about, do you have a visibility strategy? And this is something else I work with my clients on, because being visible in your career and having executive presence kind of go hand in hand. So building your executive presence development into your visibility strategy, that's your internal and your external visibility strategy, is going to be important as well. Obviously, we've talked about asking for feedback, having reflective time as well to notice what's working, what's not working, using a coach if you feel like you need some help with developing executive presence. And obviously, I've worked with lots of female execs to develop that executive presence and that leadership impact, that leadership brand. And so what I would say is, think about, if we summarize where we've got to with this, is think about what's the definition that it feels resonant to you. Look at who around you has it. What are they doing? What are they exuding that signifies executive presence? Doing your self-assessment of, what are you doing well at the moment? What do you need to dial up? And then maybe thinking about some of the areas that you want to be more intentional in, and you want to dial up in terms of experimenting with your own executive presence development, and to just be powerfully you, would be my parting shot with it, if you like. So I hope that's been useful to you, giving you some food for thought around developing executive presence. I will be back next Wednesday at 12:15, when I'm going to be talking you through doing a mini spring career review, because we are in March. It's technically going to be spring very soon. There's definitely kind of shoots popping through in my garden. So I thought it was a good time. It's kind of 3 months into the year to do a little mini career review, thinking about where you are right now, what you want, what you've achieved so far. So I'm going to be taking you through that spring career review. So please do join me next Wednesday at 12:15. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next week.